places in the world obviously has some history or the other. Okay, so if a man has been around for more than whatever 100,000 years and there's written historical records of more than couple of thousand years, so every country has a lot of history. So Taiwan centuries ago, uh, so tens of thousand years ago, their history is known and evidence of human inhabitation exists. Then culture-based agriculture around 3000 BC is believed to reflect the arrival of ancestors from today's Taiwanese indigenous people. The island was colonized by Dutch recently, say 17th century, followed by influx of Hoklo people, including Hakka immigrants from Fujian. So we hear about Hakka noodles, right? So it's a Hakka, the province in Fujian, and from mainland. The straits many years ago was shallow, okay, because the sea levels were lower. So somewhat like our strait uh, between Dhanushkodi, Rameshwaram, and okay, Sri Lanka. The straits in Taiwan was shallow, and it apparently people could walk across 4 or 5 thousand years ago. Okay, Spanish built a settlement north for a brief period, but were driven out by Dutch in 1642. So what happened was that there was a lot of sea trade between Europe and Japan, and Taiwan was a key shipping port in those days. So here's a map of Taiwan, so you can have a rough idea. Okay, it's about 100 kilometers east of Chinese mainland, and there are a couple of islands very close to Chinese mainland called Quemoy, which is part of Taiwan. And Taiwanese indigenous people, like say tribal people in India, were sort of self-contained and not that much exposed to rest of the population. Even today, they are about 2.3% of the island's population, and these people did migrate thousands of years ago to Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, Madagascar, and even Polynesia. Okay, then some of the recorded history of 1662, there was some end of Ming dynasty, and there was a Ming dynasty guy who lost control of the mainland China in 1644, and he defeated the Dutch and established a base of operations in the Taiwanese island. His forces were defeated by Qing dynasty in 1683, and parts of Taiwan became integrated into the Qing Empire. So after the Ming dynasty, there was a Qing dynasty in mainland China. Following the First Sino-Japanese War of 1895, the king ceded the island along with another island called Penghu to the Empire of Japan. And Japan existed in Taiwan till end of World War II. And Japanese imperial education was implemented in Japan, in Taiwan, and many Taiwanese also fought for Japan during the Second World War. Sun Yat-sen. Sun Yat-sen was a medical doctor, and he is widely respected both in mainland China and Taiwan. Okay, so he was a Chinese statesman, and he founded the first Republic of China, and he's called the father of the nation in Republic of China and forerunner of the revolution in People's Republic of China for his instrumental role in overthrow Qing dynasty. So this is a picture of Sun Yat-sen. Okay. Okay. Post World War II, in 1945, following the end of World War II, nationalist government Republic of China, led by Kuomintang forces, took control of Taiwan. In 1949, after losing control of mainland China in the Chinese Civil War, the ROC government under Kuomintang withdrew to Taiwan, and Chiang Kai-shek declared martial law in Taiwan. And martial law was there for many years, till almost 80s. Okay, during the post-World War period, Taiwan experienced rapid industrialization, economic growth, and is known as one of the four Asian tigers, along with Singapore. Okay, so this is a picture of Chiang Kai-shek, who earlier was, of course, in mainland China, and then in 1949 he moved to Taiwan, and he lived in Taiwan till his death. People's Republic of China and mainland, and Republic of China and Taiwan. So from 1930s onward, the Chinese Civil War was underway in mainland China between Chiang Kai-shek's ROC government and Communist Party led by Mao. So Mao later on became Chairman Mao. And when communists gained complete control of mainland in 1949, about 2 million people, predominantly from nationalist government, military, and business community, fled to Taiwan. On October 1st, People's Republic of China was founded in mainland China by victorious communists. Several months before, Chiang Kai-shek had established provisional ROC capital in Taipei and moved his Nanjing-based government there. Under nationalist rule, the mainlanders dominated the government and civil services. So Taiwan had indigenous population, but people, 2 million people who migrated, they started dominating Taiwan after 1949. So there's a timeline of history. This is from Taiwanese government source. I have given you the link on top. So from 1500s to current date, they have given a timeline. And then, like I mentioned earlier, European sailors passing Taiwan record the island's name as Formosa, the beautiful island, Ilhas Formosa. Taiwan continues to experience visit by a small number of Chinese merchants, fishermen, and pirates in 1500. Then there was this Dutch East India Company, which in 1624 established a base in Taiwan. And then Spanish adventurers established base little later, but then again ousted by the Dutch in 1642. And then in 1662, Manchurian conquest of Ming dynasty, Ming loyalists drive out Dutch from Taiwan and establish authority over the island. And then I had mentioned earlier, Qing dynasty take control of Taiwan's western and northern coastal areas. 1885, Taiwan is declared province of Qing Empire. 1895, the Japanese take over, and the Chinese cede Taiwan to Japan. And Japan ruled the island till 1945. So 1911 to 1912, Chinese revolutionaries overthrow Qing Empire in mainland. In 1943, during World War, Chiang Kai-shek meets US President Franklin Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. And after the conclusion of conference, they stated that Formosa, Taiwan, and Pescador as another island, which is called Penghu Island in Chinese, shall be restored to Republic of China. And in 1945, the ROC, UK, and US jointly issue a declaration in Potsdam calling for Japan's unconditional surrender and carrying out the Cairo Declaration. In 1948, a full-scale civil war rages in mainland China between Kuomintang-led ROC government and the Communist Party. Temporary provisions effective during period of mobilization and suppression of communist rebellion are enacted, overriding ROC constitution. This begins the period of white terror that lasts until 1991. So this is till 1991 there was no democracy in the island of Taiwan because it was under martial law. The ROC government in 1949 relocated to Taiwan, followed by 1.2 million people. Of course, some records say 2 million people, but a large number of people. Martial law is declared in Taiwan and continues to be enforced till 1987. From 1950 to 1965, Taiwan received $1.5 billion in economic aid and 2.4 billion in military aid from United States. So that was a time of the beginning of Cold War where America was trying to stem the spread of communists around the world. So they were trying to contain both China and Russia. In 1965, all American aid ceased when Taiwan established a solid financial base. Having accomplished that, Chingku, Chiang Kai-shek's son, started state projects such as 10 major construction projects that provided infrastructure for building a strong export-driven economy. Taiwan has developed steadily into a major international trading power with more than 218 billion in two-way trade and one of the highest foreign exchange reserves in the world. Taiwan's phenomenal economic development earned it a spot as one of four Asian tigers. So one of the takeaways from this part of modern history is that if you want good economic development and you have to have a good export based economy, then you have to build good infrastructure, roads, rails, airports, and seaports. Okay, so post 1974 growth. So we talked about this 10 major construction projects, and since 1990, number of Taiwan-based technology firms have expanded their reach around the world. Well-known international technology companies headquartered in Taiwan include personal computer manufacturer Acer, and we talked about Acer's mobile phone maker HTC, and electronics manufacturing giant Foxconn. So Foxconn takes contracts from major electronic companies, and Foxconn manufactures for quite a lot of different electronic companies. And Foxconn makes products for Apple, Amazon, Microsoft. And Computex Taipei is a major computer expo and is held there since 1981. Sometime, I don't know, remember, I think 1987 or something, I went to Taipei to see this Computex. Okay, so we talked about how good infrastructure is key to economic growth. So the government of Republic of China believed that the country lacked key utilities such as highways, seaports, airports, and power plants. Taiwan was experiencing significant effects from 1973 oil crisis. Therefore, to upgrade the industry and development of the country, the government planned 10 massive building projects. They were proposed by the then Prime Minister, and it was planned to be completed by 1979. Okay. So Taiwan's industrialization started with light industry, textiles, small appliances. Soon it progressed to more labor-intensive and capital-intensive production, radios, electronic devices, computers, and ICT products, including integrated circuits. Taiwan also produces some state-of-the-art weapons, including jet fighter planes and missiles, although it has limited success in competing in world's market for sales. So world's weapons market, especially in planes, is dominated by USA, France, Russia, and a little bit Sweden. And here is a sort of current technological level. So 71% of IC fabrication in the world happens in Taiwan, and about 50% of IC testing and packaging. And they make high-end bicycles and some chemicals, chlorella. And worldwide, they are number 2 in IC substrates, electro-deposited coils, IC design. silicon-based solar cells, printed circuit boards, ball screws. Okay, so there's a company here in near Sangam Bridge called Technofor. And when I was in Taiwan, I remember shopping for ball screws for there. They were doing some retrofit for lathes and they wanted recirculating ball screws. Okay. And LCD panels. So that's also a large production. 22% of the world's production of LCD panels is from Taiwan. Another place which makes a lot of LCD panels is Hong Kong. Okay. Traditional performing arts. So dance and music are among the richest legacies of Taiwanese indigenous people. So when I read about Taiwanese indigenous tribal dances, it looks like all the tribal dances, including tribal dances of United States of America, the former native Red Indians, they are all similar. They consist of simple, harmonious walking and foot stomping movements and beat on the drums. Okay, and windpipes like flutes and percussion instruments. So apparently, therefore, almost all the tribal dance has a lot of similarity all over the world. Now, traditional handicrafts such as paper cutting, knotting, making food figure sculptures of earthenware, and they were all common. But traditional performing arts such as puppetry, lion dancing, all these are dwindling, and they have to compete with television, movies, and other modern day activities. So like everywhere else, traditional performing arts is sort of getting less importance. So I don't know how many of you know about a group in India called Mackay, and they try to keep the Indian traditional art forms alive. So basically, I've covered as quickly as I can Taiwanese history. So, like I said, if you want to know more, of course, apart from Wikipedia, I have given you a link to what do you call Taiwan's. Yeah, so Taiwan government has a site where they give far more details if anyone is interested in going into the details. Okay, guys, so now time for discussion. Jenil, શું બોલે છે?
Sir, nothing.
Nothing. You were interested in Taiwanese history, I thought.
Yes, sir. It is interesting to know
Okay.
because
Yeah,
we don't know where what is the current status of many countries and
yeah. See, what happens is again, our education was skewed by British education. So, really speaking, we never got a chance to read too much of Chinese literature or South American literature, African literature, Russian literature, very little. So, almost all countries have their own, what do you call, indigenous literature, which has existed for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. So it's interesting. There was also a remark, I didn't mention it in the slides, that current day Taiwan is one of leading movie makers. Okay, so they make a lot of current movies. So they said early in 50s and 60s it was all mushy and love movies, but now the movies are more current and modern theme, more action movies and science fiction movies and stuff like that.
sir,
So
still mainland China still has some dominance over Taiwan yet, right?
no, not okay. First and foremost, since they are same people, basically, there's a lot of trade. Okay, So Taiwan's largest trading partner is mainland China. Okay, both for technological exports and imports of agricultural products. Taiwan is dependent on mainland China, but politically they are different because mainland China is still more centralistic and communist
Communist.
driven, while Taiwan is more democratic and non communist driven. But China still claims Taiwan is part of mainland China. I do not know if at all they will integrate. You never can say because after so many years, East Germany and West Germany got united. So you can't say what will happen 50 years from now. Maybe they'll get united.
So Hong Kong also, they got integrated to China.
Yeah, but Hong Kong was actually in the mainland itself. So there, British sort of gave up Hong Kong to China because British difficult to control from so far away. And anyway, it was a tiny financial capital, and most of the Chinese used to come and cross over for work from mainland China across the border into Hong Kong. So they used to come daily commute and go back in the evening to mainland China. So Hong Kong and even the other island, Macau. I think Macau has also gone back to mainland China. Macau was Portuguese, and it was a big international gambling place. They had a lot of casinos and all that. So they built a bridge between Macau and Hong Kong, which is some 40 or 100 kilometers long. I think one of the sessions that we had about bridges and infrastructure, I think I mentioned that.
Sir, so we see in many places that in Indonesia and many places that China tries to dominate over the local government.
See, there are two things. One, in most of Southeast Asian countries, including Australia, there's a very, very large population of Chinese origin people. तो क्या होता है कि there is always some family link. Okay, that's one. Number two, because of large number of Chinese people in all these places, there's a lot of Chinese cultural influence, especially in food. So suppose you go to Singapore or you go even to Philippines or you go to Indonesia, quite a lot of the food is also influenced by China, okay, or Chinese cuisine. So there is a cultural affinity because of large number of people of Chinese origin. That's number one. Number two, uh, even like United States. So when someone is economically and politically powerful, you get that big brother attitude. बाकी सब हमारे छोटे पिल्लू हैं, उनको हम संभालेंगे. Okay, so sometimes India also acts like a big brother for whatever Nepal or Bhutan or Sri Lanka. Sri Lankans don't like it. huh? So it happens. It happens that in a region when there's a strong political and economic power, it tries to. So what China does is it has this cultural power over a large population in these countries. Number two, they give a lot of development funding. Okay, most of Australia's mineral ore is bought by China, especially Australian coal, for example, and Australian aluminum and iron ore. Of course, right now there is some tiff, but these are all temporary tiffs because what lasts is economics. So ultimately, in an interdependent world, you are dependent on importing stuff. Okay, So China's domination is mainly because it's become a big economic power. It already was a cultural power because of population migration. Okay, so if you have a large number of population, some of the population moving to other countries is also large in number. Even if percentage is small, 1% of Chinese population is big for Australia, for example. No? So that is the thing. So that, now apart from that, uh, I mean, we don't know how much of it is true because there's always propaganda in the world, right? So they say, no, no, the People's Liberation Army and the Chinese Communist Party has expansionist intentions and they want to dominate the world. But I think that's gone. That old, say, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, the idea of one conquering and physically ruling countries is gone. uh, Actually, in a way you are controlling countries because of economics, okay, and exports. So the warfare from being actually people carrying guns or bows and arrows and fighting each other is more economic warfare today than actual warfare. So China's attempts more or less are probably more economic dominance than real physical dominance. But of course, there is always, for economic dominance, you need clear trade routes. So they want to establish sea routes. They want to establish land routes across Himalayas into Pakistan and then, say, go to Eastern Europe via Pakistan and things like that. So, yes, there is some territorial expansionist movement also. But I think fundamentally, more than territorial expansion, it is trade expansion, and whatever territorial rights they try to establish is to facilitate the trade routes.
Uh, Preet, Kaushik, you all guys are also interested in history, right? You want to know many more things in this topic? All are silent.
No, we said one of these days we should try and explore ancient Indian history.
Right, absolutely. So I had one query. So like from last 30, 50 years,
Yeah,
Taiwan has of course had a front runner of all this electronics, chip
yeah.
technology and all. But what could be some of the key reason where they are able to maintain that lead from like 50 years or more? Like otherwise,
No,
Chinese will
two,
also.
three things. First, they had a work culture of over 100 years from Japan, because Japan ruled them till 1945, and they instituted Japanese education system and work culture in Taiwan. That's one reason. So there's never one reason. There are many reasons. Second is, like I said, America didn't want China to physically expand and communism to spread. So America pumped in a lot of aid. $1.5 billion in 1950 is a huge amount. It's more like $5-6 billion today. Okay, so America helped Taiwan quite a lot financially. And like all countries, including Bangladesh, first Taiwan started with textiles and toys and all that. Okay. So if every country's economic development, even after World War II, when we were growing up, we used to see a lot of Japanese silk and Japanese umbrellas and Japanese toys. And it is only after 1960 that we saw transistor radios from Japan, and it's only much later we found electronic dominance from Japan. Similarly, Taiwan therefore started with lighter engineering goods exports. And since they had economic aid from America, they started exporting. And then I mentioned that any exporting nation can do well in exports only if you have good infrastructure. So they spent a lot of effort in 70s in building roads, in building airports, in building seaports and all that, because in any import export trade, one of the costs is if the ship or a plane has to stay too much at the port, paying heavy costs. So even our jet plane, which was sent to whatever Dominican Republic, they have brought it back because parking charges in Dominican airport for 2 3 weeks will be too much. So it's better to bring the jet plane back and return it to Dubai or from wherever we rented the plane. So if you have good port facilities and handling and turnaround of goods is good, then the cost of import, export, or trade in that port goes down. So that's why Amsterdam, Hong Kong, Singapore, and all became very major ports. Apart from the geographical location, which is convenient to trade into large continents, they developed into trade ports. Even Dubai, for example, Dubai doesn't have the same advantage as say as Singapore has, but Dubai has become a big port. Okay, so coming back to it, yes, um, uh, culture, good education. They have got very good universities in Taiwan. Then good um, business relationships with US, and then like I said, improvement in manufacturing and power generation and in facilities. So that's how it went. Then the American educated Taiwanese Chinese reverse migrated to Taiwan. Okay, so almost all the leaders of electronics and computer industry in Taiwan are people who have studied in America, and even now they would have a lot of their relatives in high tech companies in USA. So it's that it's it's more than government to government business. Most business happens because of family ties. You go to Dubai and you go to their market, it's all dominated by Bori Muslims. The same steel buckets, the same steel chains. So the whole trade in metal hardware is dominated by Maori Muslims, whether it is in India or whether it is in Dubai. And that is due to family connections. So they know where to buy, they share information about business and where something is available at a discounted price and stuff like that. So even oil business, you find communities dominating oil business, and all these families phone each other every day in the morning, telling them where the price is cheaper. You know, much before internet and much before credit card payments and all, I had some of my people working in Assam, and one of the boys fell ill, and I was wondering how to transfer 10,000 rupees to him quickly. And I called somebody in my friend in timber market. He said, कोई problem नहीं, तुम 10,000 रुपया मेरे को लाके दो ये और एक 100 रुपये का नोट लेके आओ. Then I went there, I gave him 10,000 rupees. He said, 100 रुपये का note. So I said, 100 रुपये का note किसके लिए है? अरे दो ना. So I gave him this 100 rupee note, and he phoned somebody in Assam and reads out the 100 rupee note's number and tells that if somebody comes and gives you this 100 rupee note number, give him 10,000 rupees. So I phoned my engineer in wherever he was and told him, ये 100 रुपए का नोट का नंबर है, ये सच एंड सच टिम्बर मार्केट में जाओ आसाम में, और वो आदमी को ये नोट का नंबर दो, वो 10,000 रुपया दे देगा. So in 2 hours he got 10,000 rupees. So how did it happen? It is because trading existed all the time, right? So and so families did business to sort of among friends and families. So a lot of Taiwanese who have settled down in America do business with Taiwanese who are still living in Taiwan. So that's how it works.
The classic example for sir, tech, human jugaad of UPI probably, how
Yeah,
technology has now, taken shape of all what we used to do,
yeah.
probably.
But remember how nice it was. It was a secure transaction, right? Because that 100 rupee note only I had, and the number on the 100 rupee note is the code. I give the code to a guy who needs the money. The trader who has taken money from here assures the other trader that the funds are secure. The other trader then knows that this is the secure code, and therefore this is the trusted party to whom to pay. So all this encryption, coding, decoding, safe transfer of money, they all existed. I mean, it's nothing new. It's become electronic. That's all.
Yeah, so Surat Mumbai trades, no, it used like 50, 100 years, crores of transactions just happen on this basis.
Yeah. Just on phone. And even earlier, before all this internet and all, when we traveled abroad and there were a lot of foreign exchange restrictions, there were people who would, trading community, especially even when I went to Taiwan, I remember I went and talked to some Sindhi friend of mine in Pune. He told me to go to some East Street shop. I gave that guy some rupees. And when I went to Taiwan, he had given me some picture with a rubber seal and all that, all written in Taiwanese. I showed that picture and that seal, and that guy in Taiwan gave me yuan or whatever their currency is. So these things were happening long time ago.
Right. Any other things like any other things in Taiwanese history you are like? Anyone, any other queries? Pre, Koshki, anything? Or
No,
that's
sir.
okay. Okay, sir. I think so. Then it was good that.
Chalo. So
Yeah.
what should we do
So
next?
can we like we spoke sometime back also this Japanese education system? No, there are a lot of key things which probably could be insight for kids. About lot of cultural thing what they do. Lot of education
Yeah,
system.
but see, in every system there are good things and bad things. So there's a lot of pressure on Japanese kids. So Japanese school kids, when they're going from school to college, go through a hell of a lot of tension. So there are good things about
Yeah,
Japan.
we can take those things. That's what I'm saying. That maybe it
Uh,
could give some insight for how the education system about new development, what all things they can imbibe probably at this stage. Would it be a good topic?
see, more important than Japanese education system is Japanese work culture.
Yeah, anything. So you can combine because it
Okay.
also comes from an education only, right? They've gone
Yeah,
through that.
yeah. It comes from education only, and the education doesn't have to be classroom education. Education can be on the shop floor. So, uh,
Yes.
so they have a very different work culture as compared to the West. And of course, now the West has therefore started imbibing some of the work cultures, especially in automobile production. In the West, after 1927, when Ford uh, made the assembly line for Model T, um, each worker did a very limited task. So what happened was that the task of the worker became automatic or autonomous or robotic, and so the workers were not what shall I say, enthusiastic about their work. Emotionally, they worked because they needed the money. While in Japan, they formed small teams, and those teams did far more than doing one task on assembly of a car.
Right. Yeah, it
So,
may be interesting, sir. They may,
yeah.
to explore a lot of from
Ah,
education what they are learning, how they are probably utilizing that in or
okay.
something like that.
So we have not talked about two, three different topics. One was ancient Indian history.
Yes.
One was Japanese, whatever, education, come work culture. So which do you want next week?
So,
You got
anything is okay. Like maybe we have for 2 weeks at least.
okay. ठीक है.
Great. I think so. Yeah. And now 11 o'clock is an ICER session on science also. Interested kids maybe can join. Sunday series they do. That's also
Oh,
very
they have
nice.
started the Sunday series
Yeah,
again.
and because they have a lot of lab setup and all, right? So they do a lot of
Yeah.
experiments also. So that also is
Okay. They show them. They
yeah.
sh- okay.
They do it in their classroom only. So they have a lot of
Okay.
equipments.
Okay.
So that is also very good actually for kids.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thanks then.
Okay. Then
Thank
bye.
you. Have a great day.
You too, all of
Thank
you.
you, sir. It was a nice session. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Bye.